AskReddit by Wonderful Wash 2145. To the Americans who don't agree with changing the gun laws? Why? I think one of the concerns that people are thinking about is that the gun reform movement is a stomach that can't ever be satisfied, meaning, they are always going to ask for more ways to reform guns until eventually people won't get to have any. And I think people who are against gun reform know that gun reform is a slippery slope to banning guns outright and overturning the Second Amendment. I would like to see more gun control, but you do make a good point. Look at what they did after 9/11. Used that as an excuse to invade everyone's privacy, and now they keep doing more and more. We need to find a way to protect our children and our rights at the same time. I just want to point out that the sensible discussion by people in this thread are a lot better than the Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson of this world. I'm always torn about gun laws, but the opinions posted here give me a lot to think about. I just wish the people here represented the don't change the gun laws side vs the assholes we get on Fox News. Real people representation in politics has nearly disappeared. Media is running wild on its own. Handguns account for nearly all of the homicides, but they aren't regulating those. If they are trying to stop deaths, why aren't they going after the things causing the deaths? Racism is the answer, but that's not the topic, so I won't even mention it. The government is all about security theater. That SAR has never once stopped a terrorist, and yet we are subjected to their useless screening every time we get on a plane. We spend an assload of money on police and have more prisoners than any other country in the world, and yet a huge chunk are in for victimless crimes. And they want to regulate assault rifles when more people are killed by unarmed assailants every year than by all rifles combined. Yeah, getting rid of scary looking guns might save a few lives. But if they spent that time and political capital on improved mental health care, it'd save many, many times more and not piss anyone off. And there's the rub. Votes are bought with controversy. No one talks for hours about things that everyone agrees on. You're not going to have a candidate's name on your lips 4 months before the election if they fix the baby formula shortage and fund cancer research. The hot button issues make elections. Governments do not care about their people. Look at selling drugs to the black community, poisoning alcohol during prohibition, anti-privacy laws. I could go on, but there's no need to fill paragraphs of these things. And we're supposed to hand over our tools of self-defense and expect the government to protect us? The same government that just sat there outside the Uvalde school? And how are they going to get guns out of the hands of criminals anyway? A good chunk of these shooters are already using guns they can't legally own. If they try to completely get rid of firearms through a war on guns in the same way they've waged a war on drugs for decades, then the amount of illegal, untraceable firearms is only going to go up with every passing decade. Also, on behalf of black people, I'd be skeptical of any government war on anything. I'm not black, but civil rights needs to be all of our fight. As a Canadian, I feel people who will still shoot up civilians will still be able to get guns, meanwhile people who follow the law will be left with melee weapons. Literally, our last mass shooting was a man who obtained firearms illegally. As a rule, if the media says it's a good idea, and the government says it's for the good of the people, it's not. There is no common sense gun laws being presented. Lawmakers don't even understand what they are doing, and they don't want to listen. Many gun owners want good control, but not let's ban scary black rifles because you don't need them to hunt type bullshit. Ban the AR-15, it's big and scary and black. Ruger 14? Is that some sort of wooden hunting rifle? Who cares? You see it over and over that this shit is surface level. It has nothing to do with the gun and its performance, it's all about how it looks and the name of it. People demanding AR-15 bans but not knowing what an AR-10 is. Problem isn't the guns. It's the society. I actually agree with you. In Germany we have very few guns and almost no gun violence. In Switzerland they have a lot of guns, although way more regulated than in the US. And also almost no gun violence. I think more than 90% of gun killings in Switzerland are suicides. The problem is the people and the culture in the US. I never felt the need to own a gun for my protection in Germany. Also, even if I had a gun, I wouldn't know if I would be able to pull the trigger. I prefer to not kill another person. Whereas in the US, people seem so trigger happy to me and don't mind killing people who step on their lawn because it was in self-defense. I mean, even if it was in self-defense, it would fuck with my head to kill someone. In the interviews you see, Americans almost seem proud to kill people under the pretense of self-defense, even if there wasn't any immediate danger. But that's just my view from the outside. Honestly, I don't know what Americans are thinking. Guns have never been legal in my country, other than for police and military. And we still have lots of gun-related crime from illegal guns. Illegal guns are also very hard and dangerous to obtain. Yet people do it anyway. Making something illegal doesn't mean people are going to stop doing it. I'm sorry to hear of the recent issues in America, but I don't see anything that could really be done, especially as Americans seem to like guns. We have a long history of laws failing to stop people from doing things and just making things worse. Prohibition funded massive crime waves. The drug war was really just a war on poor people, specifically brown people. Gun laws aren't the problem. Before 1986 you could buy machine guns over the counter. My dad brought his shotgun to school to give a demonstration on how to clean it, took it with him on the bus and everything. Mayo 24/7 news cycle had contributed a lot to these shootings. Because the criminals are still going to have their guns. It's not like they're going to all of a sudden start complying with the law just because you make guns illegal. Look at Chicago's strongest gun laws and still extremely high murder rates. Guns aren't the problem, mental health is. The issues with almost, if not all, mass gun violence is a societal issue, or a mental health issue, not a gun issue. I truly believe things like disputes between neighbors or spouses or such will still have similar injury and death rates without guns. I also believe things like mass school shootings would eventually turn into things like a teen driving his car into groups of kids in a parking lot. At its core, I don't believe in limiting the freedoms of 99% of something because 1% of people misuse it. Honest question, but why do you feel these things don't happen in other countries? In most school shootings, the perp will commit 3 different felonies, on average, before ever setting foot on a campus. If passing another law was some magical solution that could instantly solve this problem, why haven't existing laws prevented these school shootings? Separately, if the last couple years teach us anything, it's that any government ultimately doesn't care if a certain percentage of their population dies. So, why are they in such a big hurry to institute a gun ban? What makes guns so much worse than the numerous other things that kill lots of people each year? On top of all that, if the government is unwilling and able to protect the public from the Sackler family's opioids, why should anyone trust the government to offer protection from violent crime? How do you know existing laws haven't already prevented countless shootings? It is way easier to get weed in Amsterdam than Tokyo. It seems naive to think that making something illegal doesn't make it more difficult to procure. Gun rights are a class issue and gun control is rooted in systemic racism. Armed minorities are harder to oppress, that's for sure. Agreed. When the Black Panthers started exercising their Second Amendment right, we saw gun control happen pretty darn fast. To put it simply, when have criminals ever obeyed the law? We are passing laws for those who don't give 2 fucks about gun control laws. We can sit here and go, okay, no 18-year-old or younger can buy a gun, but it's just talks. Look at the Columbine shooters. They literally bought their guns illegally, still managed to commit one of the most horrific school shootings in American history. Granted, the guy who sold them the gun is in prison, but that was after they committed their violent act. Look at gang-on-gang violence. Look at how often it's committed with stolen firearms or illegally modified firearms. serial numbers filed off, modified to shoot fully automatic, sawing off the barrel to make it shorter. All of these are against the law, so what will more laws do? Enforce the ones we have, then adjust as needed. My reasons are threefold. 1. Most shooters have many mental health red flags that people like teachers ignore, which is technically illegal on the teacher's end. They are mandatory reporters. 2. My federal government regularly kills people and police response time is 8 minutes. I am small and gay and have literally been stalked to my house before. The police also did not believe me when I was raped, so never again. 3. Many people I know have inherited large amounts of firearms, upwards of 80k, and if these laws pass that have zero grace period and zero buybacks, they will instantly be felons and never be able to get the money their parents wanted them to have. I will also throw out that if you look at total violent crime, and not gun crime, we're not that much worse than a lot of countries around the world. It's just we use firearms instead of acid attacks or knives. I will say guns do present a unique problem with school shooters, but in my individual state, Illinois, they are very uncommon because we actually check mental health records before you get a firearm license, and we require you to be 21 to do anything but inherit a gun. I think gun laws can be tweaked, but the gun laws as they stand now is not the root of the problem in this country. The problem is that we are producing too many young men that want to kill other people. I personally think we need to make policy that puts more responsibility on parents to raise civil human beings. Simply put, I think there should be a massive reform in background checks and psyche evals before purchasing a gun. But a large contingency of us politicians and private citizens are for mass disarmament. If you look at every empire that has fallen since Byzantine, the first things they do are censor speech and disarm the population. You've probably heard that before. What you may not have heard is that they all ostracized people who were openly against these changes. Sound familiar? Psyche evaluations. What parameters would be used in this to determine objectivity versus subjectivity? Because it isn't a gun issue. It's the people that use them. We went from one mass shooting in the 50s to too many to name. Guns have always been available for this time. Restriction doesn't do anything about criminals who are going to break laws anyway. Armed minorities are harder to oppress. Unless the hypothetical gun law affects everyone equally, like cops and local military, it only exists to oppress the citizenry. It didn't work for prohibition or weed. Why should guns be different? Too much regulation becomes counterproductive. Also, even if it was feasible, the problem wouldn't be effective as many guns are gotten illegally or by stealing a legal gun. If laws mattered, then Chicago and Washington DC should be the safest places.